everybody, Mike Iaconelli here, back out in the shop. And I've got a special one for you today. And in today's shop, we're going to be talking about a crankbait technique that people keep very, very quiet. But we're here to expose on today's shop the technique called speed cranking. Speed cranking. And we're going to talk all about how this method can catch fish for you when other baits won't. I want to start by saying that speed cranking is perfect for almost all year long, from the pre-spawn period all the way through the post-spawn period, in the summer, and especially in the fall. Speed cranking can be killer. The one time of the year where I tend to not use this technique is the coldest months of the year, the wintertime period. So for 3 seasons of the year, speed cranking can really trigger these fish into biting. We're going to talk about this technique because it's vastly different than your normal crankbait techniques. It's so different, in fact, it really breaks the rule of crankbait fishing. Maybe we start by talking about that. You know, normal crankbait fishing, and you've heard me talk about this bait for a long, long time. In normal crankbait fishing, we want to get that lure to hit or deflect off of something, right? We want to get this crankbait and make it hit off the bottom, or get this crankbait and make it deflect off a stump or a log or a rock. But in speed cranking, we don't want the crankbait to touch anything. It's a very rare thing when you're fishing a crankbait and you don't want that crankbait to hit off something. So very, very unique in the presentation. The other thing I want to talk about before we jump into it is that speed cranking is one of the best methods I know of. Besides really finessing, this is one of the best methods I know of to catch suspended fish. Think about that, because suspended fish, even with forward-facing sonar, even with new technology like active target, suspended fish are tough to catch. They're a pain to catch. And this technique is going to allow us to get this bait to those fish that are suspended, and it's going to make these fish react. All right, one last thing, guys, before we get into it. When we talked about it, where speed cranking can work anywhere, you know, rivers, reservoirs, natural lakes, ponds, tidal rivers. The one time where speed cranking for me is not as effective is ultra muddy, dirty water. Speed cranking is really going to utilize the ability that the fish has to see the lure. So stained to slightly stained to clear to ultra clear, that's when speed cranking excels. If you get in a water that's super ugly and dirty, there's some other techniques like a spinnerbait or a chatterbait, techniques with more vibration that work better. So super versatile, 3 seasons of the year, any kind of body of water, most water clarities, suspended fish, this is the deal. All right, so you heard me talk about it earlier. The bait in this technique does not have to hit the bottom, but the bait has to get to the level of the fish, or the bait has to get to the level of the bait fish, the forage that the fish are feeding on. And because of that, we're going to use the same system that we used for picking a crankbait when we're deflecting. With the Rapala bait, here it goes, guys. Quite simply put, the DT series makes it really easy, okay? Makes it really, really easy. And when we get out there and we launch our boat and we start looking around with 2D, side imaging, forward facing, pretty quick we're going to identify where the forage is at, right? Pretty quickly we're going to identify where the marks are, where the bass are. And we want to pick the crankbait based on the depth and level of the fish and bait. Okay? So, you know, real easy scenario here. We get out there and we're in 20 foot of water and we're on a big deep flat and we start looking around out there and we see all the balls of bait. In this case, maybe it's shad. All the shad are between 8 and 10, 11, 12 feet deep, right? They're all in that middle of the water column. Suspended fish, it happens a lot. And that bait that's sitting in 10 feet, all of a sudden we start to see the marks around it, right? We start to see them little marks swimming around. So we're going to pick that crankbait based on the depth of the fish and the bait, not the bottom, okay? So in that scenario, I'm seeing bait and fish at 10 foot over in 20 feet of water. I'm going to go to a DT10. If they're in 8 feet over, 12 feet of water, DT8. Pick the crankbait that matches where you're seeing the level of the fish and the level of the bait, okay? DT series allow you to do that real easily. Real quick, while I'm here on colors, real simple, guys. I just try to match the forage. So a lot of times we're speed cranking, we're using colors that mimic forage that don't live, it's not on the bottom, right? Shad, threadfin, alewife, gizzards, herring, all those forage types like to suspend. They're in the middle of the water column. So your shad-based colors, disco shad, blueback herring. But don't forget about your other kind of forage that live in the middle of the water column. A bluegill, yellow perch, sand bass, right? So pick the color that matches that forage that you're seeing on your graph, okay? All right, there's the bait. There's the colors. All right, now let's get to this technique. And this is really what makes speed cranking special. And it's really one of these techniques where the name of it is exactly what we're going to do. So speed cranking really involves throwing a crankbait, reeling it as fast as you can reel it, and creating a reaction strike by coming through the level of the fish and the bait. Just like a heavy jig, just like a jigging spoon, speed cranking is a technique where the fish don't have a lot of time to think about it. We're going to force feed the fish with a rapid retrieve by coming through the level where they're at. So I'm basically getting out there. I'm looking at my graph. If I'm in 10 feet of water and I'm seeing all the bait 5, 6 foot down, they're not on the bottom, they're not on the top. All my marks are coming 5 or 6 foot down. I grab my DT6 and I'm casting way past where those marks are at. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Wait a minute. When I'm using forward-facing sonar, I try to drop right on their heads. But remember, we're using a crankbait, so we need some time for that lip to activate, right? We need some time to get that bait to dive 6 feet or 8 or 10 or 14 or 20, right? So I'm casting way past those marks, way past the balls of bait, way past the individual fish. And when I start cranking, guys, I'm ripping it. I'm ripping it as fast as I can rip it. The great thing about forward-facing sonar is you can watch it when it reaches the bait or when it reaches those individual marks. At that point, I'm still going to crank hard, but I'm going to throw a pause or just a little jerk into it every once in a while, just to make that bait veer off just for a second. And a lot of times when I'm reeling that as fast as I can reel it, the fish sees it. He sees that just a fraction of a second pause, and he eats it right away. This is really a force feeding technique where you're just using speed. You're using the rate of speed to trigger the bite. When that bait comes past them and it's the same size as what they're eating. Threadfin shad. And it's going right through the level of their food source. It's going just above or below their head. They can't help themselves because it looks like something trying to escape. It looks like one of the shad left the ball, and that really triggers that reaction that they want to eat it. Okay, so long cast, past your bait, past the mark, reel it really fast. Watch your bait. If you don't have forward facing, just guesstimate. And then every once in a while, throw a slight pause or just a rod tick into it, just to make it veer off, okay? The bites you're gonna get, guys, are so vicious. It literally, the best way I can describe it is when you get to that level, that fish, and one turns on it and eats it, it's almost like you hit a brick wall with speed cranking. It's, you know, you feel that steady vibration, and all of a sudden it's whoo. And the great thing about it is you know there's nothing there to snag. You're in the middle of the water column, or 3/4 of the way down, or 1/4 of the way down from the top, and you know there's nothing to hit. And all of a sudden your rod just stops, it loads up, and you've got a big bass. Let me talk about the rod and the reel and the line, especially the reel, because guys, this is an important part of speed cranking. On the rod, use the same exact rod you use in your other crankbaiting techniques, okay? So 7 to 7.5 foot medium action rod, right? A whippy rod. And you know, I like that Abu Garcia Ikes series. This particular rod is parabolic because it's composite. It's glass and graphite, so it's very whippy. That soft tip allows me to make long cast. It gives me delay in hook set, and it helps me land fish on a treble hook bait, okay? So 7 to 7.5 foot, medium action parabolic rod. The reel, listen to me. Normal crankbaiting, a 6/8 to 1, a 7 to 1 is great. Ultra deep diving crankbaits, a 5 to 8, a 6 to 6, perfect. You know, big giant lipped crankbaits when you're trying to reach the bottom. But guys, for this technique, for speed cranking, we're going to go to an ultra fast reel. I want you to use an 8:1 or higher gear ratio reel. So the same reel you'd use for burning a crankbait or burning a spinnerbait or burning a buzzbait, the same reel you'd use for frogging or flipping when you want that super fast gear ratio. That's the kind of reel we want. So, man, this is that Xenon, Abu Garcia Xenon. It's 8.1, super high speed. That's exactly what you want for speed cranking. Last but not least, online, 95% of the time, almost all the time when I'm speed cranking, I'm using straight fluorocarbon. Anywhere from 10 to 17 pound Berkley Trilene, 100% fluorocarbon. I'm a big fan of 12-pound tests because it covers a lot of different scenarios. General rule of thumb is lighter line to make it dive deeper, lighter line when there's not a lot of stuff in the water, heavier line when you want it to run a little shallower, and heavier line when you got some kind of cover targets in the water in case you get hung up. But 12-pound, 100% fluorocarbon is a great line to fish with this technique. All right, there you have it. I know I've got a lot of people watching this that are saying, why did you just give up that secret technique called speed cranking? Well, we're here to hopefully help you catch more fish. Give this one a try. Remember, you don't need to hit the bottom with this technique. It's about speed. It's about creating a reaction strike. I hope you enjoyed this one, man. Talking about speed cranking, letting it out of the bag. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to my channel. If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help you hopefully become a better angler and catch more fish. Try this one, speed cranking. You're going to catch more bass. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these two, and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.